Yes, sir. All right. Welcome to this week's edition, the 92nd edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours, everyone. Thank you so much for taking time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community, mentorship, and learning. I'm your host, Dave Nava. I'm a lead solution engineer at Salesforce and a military trailblazer. My able co-pilot for tonight's adventure is David Albright, also a lead solution engineer at Salesforce. As you're probably aware, each week we invite a co-host, or in some cases, as in tonight, co-hosts, to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, their expertise, and their unique perspectives. In tonight's session, we're joined by Trailhead leaders, and we'll be focusing on the future of Trailhead. So, if you've been living in a cave or under a rock and you're not aware of the enhancements taking place across the Trailhead learning platform, tonight is your chance to get caught up, as well as chat about what's in store for the future. So put on your hiking boots, because we are trailblazing tonight. And I'm going to stop sharing as I introduce our guests. And here we go. I'd like to welcome and briefly introduce our co-host panel for tonight's session. And Weeby, Andy Bergman, and Chad Labrosse. Anne is a senior vice president of Trailhead at Salesforce. She was introduced to Trailhead through their community work in the Bay Area. She's an Army combat veteran who was hired in 2015 to lead VetForce, the name at the time, and oversee the company's commitment to train military veterans and spouses in Salesforce ecosystem jobs. Anne has worked in 3 distinct roles over her 8 years at the company, focused on the intersection of impact, technology, and workforce development, including being the co-founder of Salesforce Military. In August 2022, she was hired to lead all of Trailhead and oversees the incredible team and strategy for our beloved learning platform. Salesforce Military is still on her team, working toward the commitment to train 80,000 members of the military in Salesforce skills. We're rapidly reaching that goal, which is awesome. Andy is vice president of Trailhead content at Salesforce. He began his tech career as product release and enablement program manager at ExactTarget, making the move to Salesforce when they were acquired in 2012. And he's been with Salesforce for over 10 years, serving in a variety of design and product-related roles before taking the helm of Trailhead Content. And Chad is Vice President of Engineering at Salesforce. He's been in the tech industry for over 20 years and has been with Salesforce since 2012. Chad's Salesforce career began as a software development manager, and he quickly moved into director and senior director roles before taking over Trailhead Engineering. Today, Chad runs the Trailhead product team, which includes the product and UX design team in addition to engineering. It is awesome to have you all co-hosting Office Hours with me. Welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, exciting. If you could each take a moment and introduce yourselves further and share your Salesforce stories in a bit more detail, that would be fantastic. And would you like to lead us off?
Sure. Hi, everybody. Lots of familiar faces, new faces. It's wonderful to be here with you, Dave and Andy and Chad. So Salesforce had an idea to support the military community in 2014. And there were some great folks who were at the company starting an initiative to really do admin training for veterans and military spouses. And I was at the Dreamforce as an attendee. And I said, gosh, who runs this? And they said, oh, we don't have anyone yet. And so that was in October of 2014. And in February of 2015, I was brought in to lead it. So my job changed numerous times, but really proud of what we did to really learn how people break into the ecosystem, all the way from what is enterprise software. We know that a lot of the military community has never heard of Salesforce before or thinks it's sales jobs. We hear this all the time because we talk to the community. And how do we really get them from the first few badges to that dream job that we talk about? And so I'm really proud that we've taken the lessons from the military community and that we've brought them over to the main learning site of Trailhead, and we're excited to share all the lessons that we're pulling in from many of you in your careers.
Awesome, man. Thanks so much for sharing. And we share a common goal. The whole point of this program is to expose the military community to Salesforce and Trailhead. So happy to be here with you. Andy, do you want to take over?
Yeah, so I've been in Salesforce for almost 12 years. Many of you have probably gone through some element of content that either me or my team has produced. So if you've been in a classroom experience or in an event experience, my team has probably put that together for you. And over the past really 5 to 6 years, been really focusing on the Trailhead content and continuing to focus on scale. So I have this great opportunity working with military, working with all of our various Trailblazers to really help scale them up. And so if you've got feedback on any of our content, I always love to hear it. it's a great opportunity for me to continue. But of course, if I see you in an event, please say hi as well. So happy to be with you all today.
Thanks very much, Andy. Yeah, we all love the Trailhead content, so thank you for that. Chad, do you want to bring it home for us?
Sure, thank you. And thank you for the nice intro, Dave. I know most of you are thinking, Chad, you've been in the years 20 plus years. How could that be? You look so young. Oh, stop it. You people, stop that. But it's true. I joined in 2010, and I thought I missed the party. Cloud computing, this, it's like, Salesforce is now 24 years old. That was 10 plus years into and I thought, I missed it. But here we are. We're much larger and continue to grow. I was at a careers panel today at my son's high school, and talking with high school students, talking about their futures in computer science in the tech industry. And one thing I said to them think about it. I bet a bunch of you are going to do jobs that aren't yet defined, that actually don't exist yet. We don't even know what that is yet. And that's for me kind of a provocative statement to challenge them to think about lifelong learning and careers and how to keep learning as a constant thing. And at times it's quite overwhelming, like things like ChatGPT happening. You're like, I missed the boat. I don't understand all this. But really, if you just take a step back and catch a breath, you're all capable of learning it. And what doesn't go away is that need that's kind of where we're all sitting in right now, where we have this opportunity in front of us to do right by these people beyond just what the technology is driving us to. So that's why I remained super excited about what's happening in Trailhead, the opportunity to learn and for all of you to make a material impact in your life, hopefully by getting you on a path to a new opportunity. So let me pause there. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. Definitely an exciting future. There's so much new functionality coming out across the tech industry, especially at Salesforce. So we are excited to dive in. Before we do, for those joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before we open the floor for questions and discussion. So these sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies. Absolutely everyone is welcome to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding related topics in order to help you achieve your professional development and career related goals. This next hour is your hour. It's an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. So everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and speak up and help answer and ask questions from your perspective, which will of course provide additional diversity to the dialogue, diversity of experience to the dialogue. Please do keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. My co-pilot, David Albright, has been posting things, as have other folks. So it's a great place to go look for information on networking, employment opportunities, and learning. If you have a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to raise your hand or post it in the chat if you don't feel comfortable speaking up, and I will go ahead and call on you in the order received. Finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let me know before speaking, and I will make sure that it's edited out of the final recording. So with that, we're going to go ahead and dive into the questions, and I want to focus on kind of initially where Trailhead is headed. So, Ann, Andy, Chad, if you could talk about how you see Trailhead evolving over the next 5 years with respect to your long-term vision and goals, that would be fantastic.
Yeah, I can kick it off, and then these guys have the history. I'm the new one here to the trio. But Trailhead, this team stands on the shoulders of giants who have been working on Trailhead for a really long time. And Trailhead is really all about its content. And so the partnership with Andy's team and the excellence they have to keep everything updated is really our foundation. And so, as I've gone around and talked to people about their feedback on Trailhead, it's, keep doing what you're doing, Andy, is, what people say time and again at every single event. And then it's about how do we deliver this? We want to help people launch their careers. And so we talk about learn, earn, connect. I'm a workforce development professional. That's where my career's been for a long time. So I really came in to focus on that connect piece. And I'm excited about learning personalization, excited about innovation, excited about delivery and emerging technologies and careers, and just how we really take somebody through the journey. The other piece of it, which isn't just specific to Trailhead, but it really is appropriate with the military community, is this is a career that comes with a community of people. The military came with a community, whether you're a spouse or you were you rose your right hand, but how do we really make sure people know how to access the community? Tools like this, the user groups, and so connecting online and in-person experiences is something that we want to do so that somebody doesn't just show up and think it's a website and miss all of you.
I can go next. Just a couple thoughts. For me, it's being a technologist primarily. I think about the ability to automate and scale and to take this to the next level using the appropriate amount of automation. I'm not saying we're just cranking out widgets here. There's a human story to tell and kind of there's some personal stuff to put in there, but there's an opportunity for all of that. All of the stuff that we do, in my mind, has to be anchored in our core values, things like trust and innovation, customer success, equality. We don't want to go off and automate the wrong solution, for example, or introduce bias into processes that don't represent who we are and what we value and what we cherish. But for a couple of key things, as much as I enjoy saying this and I say it all the time, and it's a nod to my partner in crime here, Andy, and the content team. For me, content is the heart of all this. I build the teams and the systems around that kind of access it. But if the content wasn't great and the content wasn't compelling and getting value out of it, the beautiful UI work, experience and all the mobile apps that make it are just they're going to miss the mark. And so for me, it's about great content, and then I can layer on top of that. And so Andy's team has certainly been delivering on that for years and years of stuff, but there's more to do. I think we can make even more better ways to engage you, help to train you, help to test that you've actually mastered the material you're consuming, and then ultimately be able to take that mastery and probably shepherd you into roles in our community, in our broader ecosystem. And so those are kind of the big opportunities here around content innovation and ultimately getting people placed in something meaningful. And along the way, using the tools that are emerging, things like ChatGPT, like wouldn't it be nice to just ask ChatGPT to set you up a learning journey for you and then slot the courses in, things like that. So they're kind of percolating in my mind. How do I bring technology to scale around the problems that I just kind of framed that are in front of us?
Yeah, it makes sense, while also avoiding some of the challenges that you mentioned, which can come with automation, such as bias. So it's an interesting area to chat about. We're going to talk about that more here in a moment. Andy, what about you? What are your thoughts?
So, Salesforce has evolved a lot. And so obviously from a content team standpoint, we like to try to stay as closely aligned to our products and making sure you have the best information. So if that's a brand new product launching, or maybe we're deprecating a feature set, that's our constant kind of goal, and we try to do that every release cycle. And so one of the interesting parts for us, and even some of my peers and other companies, is we actually do a really great job of actually keeping our content up to date, especially as features deprecate. Where I've seen some of my peers, they'll take 2 to 3 months to actually achieve that. And so at least over the next 3 to 5 years, we'll continue to drive that and bring that from that forefront. I think, as Anne alluded to a little bit earlier, continuing this focus around kind of the pathing standpoint. We've heard a lot of feedback, right? We built so much content, and we've been in such a growth mode from getting Trailhead to offer more and more content and badges. However, though, it sometimes can be overwhelming, and where do I start? Or maybe where do I start in this new product or feature? And so I think that's another area for us as we continue to move forward. And then I think lastly, we've been focusing a lot on technical content. We're starting to see a shifting point, especially around various roles. What are those soft skill components that also come into that perspective, and adding more of that component in to help someone be the best, well-rounded professional that they can be within the role that they're in.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know I love the soft skill focused Trailhead sessions, because our competitors in technical training don't provide that typically in their solutions. So it's a full round solution to be able to come into the ecosystem and know what to do from a technical perspective, but also the soft skills and some of those transitional skills that you bring from the military to be successful. That's awesome. I want to focus, before we move on from this topic, I want to kind of focus a little bit on some of the challenges that Chad was talking about earlier, and then dive in a bit more into the content process that Andy was referencing, and then we'll move on to kind of what's new with Trailhead and what's coming up. And so, Chad, you brought up some of the challenges. What are some additional challenges that all three of you are facing in terms of developing and improving Trailhead to reach that broader audience while being more inclusive and better enabling learners? And then how are you addressing those challenges? One was brought up with automation, right? You can introduce bias, which is the opposite of being inclusive. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, I can start. So one thing I led a team called Workforce Innovation before I came over to Trailhead, and we brought some of that team with us. And we've done a lot of deep population work supporting specific folks like refugees, like through our Racial Equity and Justice Task Force, or our veterans work. So we brought that in, and we're thinking about how do we align and scale all these programs that have really been based on population, and how do we take this and really help anyone who's launching. And so really all the lessons from the military community, what have we learned and how can we use that to support a lot of other people? So one thing I'll just share specifically around Salesforce Military is we're just growing rapidly. You all are out there helping us get new people signed up. Thank you. And those, it's a lot of cases, it's a lot of people to support. And so I don't know if has anyone seen at salesforce.com/military, either authenticated or not, there's a new feature. Anybody know what it is? Launched on Thursday. Well, somebody's going to go and find it. Andrew Russo's like, I need to.
No, now I feel bad. I just looked at the site this morning, and now I'm like, what did I miss?
Bottom right-hand corner, we've got a chat bot now. And so we went back into all of our case data, and we found out what you all were asking for. And so it's really helping us with things like case deflection and the VA, right? The people who are used to some of these nonprofits and concierge programs, they ask us to call them all the time. Can someone just call me? A lot of us are veterans and part of the military community. We want to, but you can't scale and automate that at a corporation, right? And so how do we make it feel, kind of the heart of Service Cloud and not the robot of Service Cloud provided? I'm sure some of you deal with this in your work as a challenge. And so we really want to bring that same service and support to people, whether it's a case or whether it's a badge. And so other bigger challenges, right? Like you guys come here because you get to ask your personal question. People want to know, where should I go? What should I learn next? What did I just learn? Did I learn it enough to be billable, right? And employers have the questions on the other side of the coin. And so we can't do that for every individual. And we want to get to a point where we're supporting you in bigger, better ways to answer some of those questions.
One of the comments I might add around recognizing sort of bias or things that are different in different parts of the world is just sort of that regional awareness. Trailhead started off as a, probably a North American kind of focused thing, but we quickly branched out to our second largest cohort, I think, is in India, and we have over 10 languages. We just, so being just regionally aware, we're not just an American focused thing. And so what are legal implications of what we may or may not do? What are the normal sort of cultural norms in that area? What are the compliance issues we have to deal with? What about things like data privacy, or how are they different? And so you have to think more broadly, which is not just as great as it was when it was easy and it's focused here. There's the opportunity lives outside of our borders, and we need to be more inclusive of that kind of stuff. The other thing I'd say is ability to help, to Anne's point around not being able to scale, and for Trailhead as a team to do it all by ourselves. We want to engage the community with things like the Trailblazer community, where you can help each other with technical problems, or share career advice, or share opportunities, and kind of help. We'll provide maybe some of the framework to help each of you help each other and build that community around it. There's challenges that introduces other challenges with spam bots and other things that can go wrong in the technology, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't try and do our best to kind of foster that community that can support what we're all trying to do, which is raise the bar for all of us.
Yeah, it's definitely our superpower, our community, for sure. What about you, Andy?
I would just kind of plus one, kind of what Anne and Chad said. I think we have such an opportunity, and as the ecosystem has grown, we know that there's going to be skills that need to be grown from that. And also too, as we add on new products or we acquire products, for those of you who've been around, right, your head probably spinning because you maybe learn Sales Cloud, but now there is 13 other clouds that you're just like, what is this? And how do I bring this into my organization? Or how do I even skill up on this? And so that is an area that we're constantly trying to really think through and look at from that standpoint.
It's definitely a lot to process, and content creation is hard. I know a little bit about it because I have to create content for these sessions, and it is really, really challenging. And that kind of leads us into our next question. Before we dive into what's new with Trailhead is, I would love to know what drives your creative process. How do you approach creating new content and courses for Trailhead? What's the process like? Where does your inspiration come from, and how do you ensure that it's relevant and effective for learners? So a lot of questions kind of wrapped up into that one, but
yeah. Yeah, so the one nice part is, and we take a lot of pride in this. So for some of you that don't know, so Trailhead is a really great Salesforce and Salesforce story. And so a lot of our content mechanics actually sit within a Salesforce org. We run all of our content processes through that. And there's kind of how we bring kind of content creativity to life. It's a couple different areas. So one is we put a big emphasis on hands-on. The bigger part for us is how do we continue to bring individuals into the technical product space? Because we know, reading and going through experiences are great, but the more that you're actually able to have that tactile experience and actually touching that product, that is so powerful for all of our Trailblazers. And so that is kind of one of our core elements that we look at. Secondary to that is we work with a lot of our product managers and various teams as products are coming out. We're looking from that standpoint. And then as that kind of evolves, then we work with our admin relations team and really seeing what are the skills like and jobs to be done that we want to put an emphasis on. And so that's where we've really started to see a lot more of the soft skills coming in. What are the daily habits that an admin needs to have day in and day out? And how do we bring that learning to everyone from that standpoint? And then, of course, kind of bringing our tone and voice to that and trying to make technology more approachable than actually kind of generalized and scary and overwhelming. That is probably our last part to kind of our creative process. How do we make this fun? How do we help bring down kind of the scariness of maybe that product or that feature set and make it very accessible for everyone?
Yeah, we definitely love the gamification, which sets Trailhead apart from virtually all other learning content. And I love the jobs to be done framework. And if you're wondering what that is, there are many Trailhead modules out there that will educate you on that, so go look them up. So thank you for that, Andy. I want to pivot now and talk about kind of what's new with Trailhead. And before we do, a bit of a caveat, forward-looking statement, obviously, anything we discuss here is there's no guarantee that it's going to come out. So make your learning and your purchasing decisions based upon what is currently in Trailhead now. But and a second caveat to say that, if any, and Chad and Andy, if any of the questions that I ask you don't really want to dive too deep on, because the product roadmap obviously is a sensitive topic and you have to keep things secret until they come out. Totally understand that. And so I will go ahead and launch into that, having mentioned that. So if you can, what are some new features from the product roadmap that you're excited to release in the coming months that you can share with us?
Yeah, Dave, I can take this first. I'm going to do a little bit of a look back because the context is relevant for this group. But one thing we're doing kind of from some of the population work we're doing is trying to bring it to many more groups. And so taking some of the platforms that you all know and just bringing them all under Trailhead for one seamless experience. So for instance, Salesforce Military, which, I think a lot of people here, a majority here, have access to. We built a copy of that platform, and that's what Coach is. And so when we launched Trailhead Coach, that is so it's not just the military who can access, and that's under Trailhead, and that we're trying to provide this same gated structure where we ID someone, that we get them through the first badges, that we put them on one trail mix, that they get their admin certification, that it unlocks multiple certifications. And what we're doing is trying to invest in some of our workforce partner programs in a bigger way, and so that they can continue learning. I think what we've been so impressed by watching the military spouses and veterans is that we just set up a learning buffet of all you can learn with certifications, and you all just went for it. And so we wanted to say, if that works for other people who are have hustle and are autodidactic, they can go after it. And so we're seeing refugees, we're seeing underrepresented minorities, we're seeing all these different groups, opportunity youth without college degrees, right, have that same access to what you all have had access to for years and years, and then they can continue to grow their careers. And so we're kind of running those dual platforms. And I just wanted the team to know that we're really, really scaling. So you have to be a member of the Workforce Development Partner Program, and then all the alumni and students all the alumni and students can then access that same or similar platform that you all have. So just wanted to share that. And then Chad, I don't know how well known it is, but a couple things that might be interesting for you to talk about is the SEO and the playground work that your team has done. I think, to speak to creativity, when I came over to Trailhead, I was so impressed by the team. They are driven by you all. They're driven by a great experience for Trailblazers, the feedback that we get from our Trailblazers, and just making sure everything is world class for you all and constantly evolving. So the amount of ideas that the team has and the things on the roadmap, our eyes are bigger than our stomachs, certainly. But we have just a really exciting list, and some of the most passionate, mission-oriented people I've ever had the opportunity to work with in my career, with the hands on the keyboard behind the scenes.
Yeah, Anne's sick of me coming to her, say, Anne, can I have more people? Can I have more people? I have all these great ideas. You want to build this stuff? And she's like, if I could, I would. So yeah, thank you for that. There's no shortage of idea and passion behind this, but just to touch on two of the things you mentioned, SEO is search engine optimization. And this is the mechanism that Google uses to crawl the web and find stuff and index it. So when you type in something in the Google search bar, it knows where to direct you. And so we know that most of our traffic, a lot of our traffic comes to Trailhead via Google searches. And without our content showing up high on that ranking, it's unlikely some people will find us unless they already knew about Trailhead. And so it's such an under the covers plumbing thing, but it's so critical on getting people to our site. So one of our engineers knows all the details about how to do SEO properly and went and fixed our own site. Technical details I won't bore you with, but fixed our site so it got ranked higher in Google search algorithm. And we saw an increase in our traffic coming from outside of Salesforce to our site. So that was one example of just someone's passion and having the details and just didn't ask for permission. It just went and did it and showed us the results. And we're like, yes, more of that, please. The other one that Anne touched on is playgrounds. Playgrounds are the Salesforce orgs that get spun up in the background when you need to go hands-on challenges. So one of our things that Andy touched on, most people learn best by actually doing, not just reading. And so we give you challenges where we say, go define this in Salesforce and follow these steps actually for real in a real Salesforce org. Those are called playgrounds. And some of the challenges we've had in the past were sort of bringing those things up, from the moment you click launch playground to the moment the thing comes up and is ready to use. We had some problems with performance, and that's a real terrible experience when you're on the floor at Dreamforce or Trailblazer DX conference. You're trying to complete a module in time, and it's taking 20 minutes for the org to spin up in the background. So we did a lot of technical work behind the scenes to spin that up. And for the last two major conferences, Dreamforce and Trailhead DX, these things had like 10,000% performance improvement. So again, just low-level engineering stuff, but it manifests itself in the experience that each of you have when you're trying to use these things. So it's super critical that we get that stuff right. Those kind of things I almost put in the bucket of on the one side of the spectrum, we have this true to the core or true to the trail, if you will, kind of side of the innovation spectrum. And at the other end is this pure play net new innovation thing. For those who had a chance to watch one of the Dreamforce conferences or Trailhead DX conferences, you'll see Parker historically and a bunch of the leaders in this true to the trail, true to the core session, where people can just get up and ask real specific detailed questions about existing products and how come this doesn't work this way, or can you make this a little bit better for me? And it's really a nod it's actually a credit to Parker and his team and the company they built that we actually, what a thought, actually listen to our existing customers and what they want and what they're passionate about and fix the things we've already partially built. And so we remain committed to doing that, but it comes at a cost, and the cost is you can't, do pure play net new innovation all the time. So we have to find that balance. There's that constant balance between that. So, for example, on the Trailhead website, we've got on the Today page up on the top right-hand corner, there's some recommended learning, like people who completed similar badges might want this one, or after you complete a badge, this is another popular one you might want to do. Sort of recommendations light, for example. If you look at anyone who uses Netflix or any of those other applications, you get pages and pages of recommendation. People, this is new and trending. This is similar to what other people like. This one's ranked highest, and you can scroll through. There's just lots of opportunity here. We've dipped our toe in that pond, but haven't quite gone far enough down that path in my mind. And so that's an example of maybe net new innovation where we might want to go in. The other area I'd touch on briefly is the content innovation stuff that Andy spoke of. And again, I use Netflix as my mental model. All the content offerings there are so wonderful, and we'll put up with less than optimal experience to get that content. And so how do we double down on content and make it wonderful? Can we extend our hands-on challenge offerings to beyond to just the Salesforce core platform sales services to other things like Mulesoft or Tableau, for example? How do we keep the interaction exciting with new quiz types? So currently there's multiple choice quizzes, A, B, C, but are there new ways we could challenge people to make sure they're synthesizing the material? Drag and drop, reorder this list, like those kind of incremental innovation, but it's new. It's a challenging way. And last thing I'd say on the content side, Andy touched on it a bit, is not everyone learns the same way. I have somebody on my staff who is super bright, just an amazing, talented developer, designer, but she struggles with just long form text and dyslexia and trying to synthesize material. And so for her, it's a challenge to read pages and pages of text. She'd be much better served to have something more tactile. And so we need to be mindful of that, the way that not everybody learns the same way. And so we need to be looking for opportunities to bring the best of that to people. Let me pause. That's a lot of stuff. So Andy, you have thoughts?
Yeah, so I think as Chad mentioned, right? And I love the comments in so hands-on challenges, continuing to drive non-core offerings, I think is a big part of where we're going to see kind of this next year going. Also too, since David did the disclaimer earlier, something that we're going to be piloting at the end of this month that you'll see is bringing a concept that we call Trailcasts, which allows you to actually listen to the content of the overall badge. Mostly, we see a lot of this from the mobile app experience, but having you have the ability to kind of listen through that text and then going back and then actually completing that quiz. And so we're going to experiment with that. So if you have feedback on that, I'm gonna look for all of you on this military call, since you heard it here first. Would love the feedback on, like, should we do more of that? What should that look like, and how can we continue to innovate on that component? So partly for us is we know not everyone learns from reading all of that text, and we're trying to figure out different ways to bring that to the forefront. But hands-on, I think, will still be a critical part of what you see on Trailhead.
That's awesome. A ton of stuff covered, for sure. If you're not familiar with Trailhead Coach, it came out at TDX and is a game changer for folks that don't have the Salesforce military advantages, maybe some of your friends. So be sure to share that. And if you have questions about it, raise your hand during the session. I see that we have a couple hands raised. I'm going to get to you folks after we tackle some of the questions. SEO was brought up, the unsung hero. So glad to see that that's been improved upon. And then Trailcast actually tackles or directly relates to the first question that we had in chat, which is awesome. And Yumi's asking, I'm curious to know, in addition to Trailcast, of course, how accessibility needs are being addressed for Trailhead.
Yeah, it's a great question. So the one element for us on the accessibility side is accessibility is actually at the forefront of everything that we do from a content standpoint. So every video, every image, we make sure alt text is also based on all of our text. And so screen readers, adding in elements of Trailcast, I think will also help from that standpoint. Something else that we've been partnering with is the Blind Institute of Technology. And we actually, our Office of Accessibility actually runs the Salesforce admin program with them, similar to what you see here on the military side. And not to put down Salesforce a little bit, but we have some areas where screen readers are not accessible to the Lightning framework. And so what you may see in a couple of our existing badges is actually see some different instructions that will be accessible for someone leveraging a screen reader, where if they need to go back into Classic to do a certain feature based around that screen reader, they'll have that ability to do that. And so you want to bring the same experience to someone learning a topic area that may unfortunately have to be in Classic, but we want that experience to be accessible for everyone to continue to go through that upskilling.
Yeah, I appreciate the clarification, Andy. Thank you. Moving down the question line, Lori asks, the HLS, Health and Life Sciences, is slow to adapt to tech changes. Will there be more Health Cloud modules, not just focusing on patient care, but also on the internal customers such as nurses, CNAs, doctors, et cetera, to make their jobs more efficient?
That is a great question. I don't know that we've really put any emphasis there, so maybe that's some feedback I can take back to the team and see what we can do.
Awesome. So Lori, mic drop for you. All good. Thank you for the question. And then we've got one more question, and then we'll head over to Elio and then Iris, who have raised hands. And so there's a question in chat. And I don't see who asked it because it's already scrolled up, but it was essentially, are there going to be Mulesoft and Tableau hands-on challenges, which I think is an awesome question. It would be exciting. What do you think?
Oops, I was going to say, those are some of the obvious areas we're looking at. But, as you've probably known, Salesforce has acquired many companies over the last few years. And I think for a little while, you get a pass in terms of, oh, they just bought this company, give them time to settle in, Slack, for example. And then eventually you need to get to a point as Salesforce, one Salesforce, to have offerings that are right for each of those acquisitions, if you will. The data tells us we know hands-on is the way to go. There's some technical challenges because often when you purchase a company, a large company like that, they're built on a different tech stack, a whole different, it's not just like plugging them in. So we have to work through some of that as an engineering team. But those are a couple of areas that Slack is the other one that comes to mind. How to build workflows in Slack, or even more deeper on the content side of things. But those are obvious things that stand up. Safe harbor, we're not committing to any dates or the breadth of quantity of offerings in those spaces. But those are some of the natural ones. And love to hear others, other people that are other thoughts around people use in the Salesforce product suite more broadly, where they're looking to get hands-on with things to take their learning to the next level.
That's good news and awesome to hear. So we'll look for that to come out in the future. We've got a couple hands raised, a couple questions. So we'll get to the hands raised and then we'll pause for a group photo so we can always be branding. And then we'll head back into the questions. So Elio and then Iris. Elio, you have the first.
Thanks, Dave. Yeah, great conversation. I know that we have feeds of different data. The question about reading and being sometimes difficult. We have Salesforce Plus at Salesforce, but it's not integrated into Trailhead. And I think that is a great opportunity to take some of these videos to show some of the context that would support some of the reading and also allow people to use a different medium within Trailhead. Right now, myself, I am studying for my one of my exams, and I have a link to Vidyard that somebody shared with me from Salesforce that has a ton of videos, and it's like, it would be great if we can take some of these videos and integrate them into Trailhead, so they can support some of the learning, some of the reading and hands-on, because we do have, and that was my question, is have you thought about that? Have you thought about bringing a little bit more of the technologies that Salesforce has used with this different mediums into Trailhead? Is that something that you're considering?
Yeah, so, and if you haven't gone through a project in a while, something that we piloted last year, so Anna and Chad know this, from a content standpoint, I love to just pilot and kind of see what's sticky and what works. So we did a series called Trail Together, and if you go into any of the projects in Trailhead, we essentially have an individual who gives you context based around that project. And the reaction that we saw was so beneficial to the overall learner that, Elio, I agree. Like, there's other parts that we can add in videos to bring in more context. then maybe what you're not getting just by reading a paragraph or a subset, or maybe you're like, I just tried to do this hands-on and like I'm just stuck and like I don't understand what I just did or the reason why I did it. And so what we're starting to see is much more of context and why I'm doing what I'm doing within the overall product. But I think,
Thank you.
to your point, right? Salesforce Plus, other videos that are out there, I think the more that we can add those components in to kind of enhance the learning, I think is a great idea.
I also like the idea of being able to access the material in a time that's right for you. So for example, I ride the train into work, BART, I'm in the Bay Area. And when I'm standing up, holding on with one hand, I can't get my laptop out and do a full screen reader. So maybe I'm using the Trailblazer app and I want to, just watch a video or listen to it or kind of just glance at it, but not have to, just, it doesn't work right on a smaller device to have, a hands-on challenge running there, which as many of you know why we don't have hands-on challenges on the mobile devices, but things like that. There's an opportunity to bring them into the channels that already exist and broadening an offering that's just not always text. And even if it is offered at a full screen desktop experience. So I think you're onto something there. And yes, we have thought about it, but it's beyond just like, oh, we'd love that. There's the whole content authoring and management of the content, and as things change and whoops, we changed the name of that product. We have to go re-record 50 videos because it's not anymore. So there's some of that you have to think through up front, but I can see the value for sure.
Great question, Elio. Thank you. We're going to take Iris's question or comment, and then we'll go ahead and break for the picture and then back into the questions. You have the floor, Iris.
Thank you so much, and super duper excited to see you all. And it's so good to see you again and watching how Trailhead has evolved just since I've been at HOH in the past few months, gaining my certification and everything. It's come on leaps and bounds. But like you guys are preaching to the choir, we are the ones who are already, we drank the Kool-Aid and we're queuing up for more. We all love it. I speak to hundreds of people every week, I would say, and that struggle to get them to slow their roll, to say, you know what I mean, to do the first steps in Trailhead is a little bit challenging because they just want to dive in and get that certification and they miss all of those necessary modules that you need to, be able to effectively use Trailhead. I only say that because I did that. And then I had to go back and do all those beginning trails. Do you have any advice for people who are new or something that I can share to help people navigate and do the trails right and not get stuck in that where they've got like 1,000 points, but no certification?
Yeah, I think we'll all probably have a little bit to add to this, but before we do, I just want to Iris is essentially an extension of our Salesforce military team. So Iris works at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And when we were trying to figure out how to get people from certification to work experience, her team stepped in and they do resume releases. They do onboarding for both employers and for Trailblazers. They help people through their first work experience. They do Friday huddles like this, which is part of their secret sauce where people get to talk about what the heck they're doing at work. The guy who got 6 orgs in his first day at this nonprofit, he finds a community to talk to. And so, and Iris has become passionate about Salesforce herself. So it's just a player coach and an instrumental part of our team. So I just wanted to say thank you, Iris.
Oh, God bless you. Thank you.
And so folks do go back and do them, right? If they don't heed the advice, we do see a lot of redos, right? And one behavior we watch is people going from program to program to program. And it's like, I just tell people, like, buckle yourself into your desk chair. Like, everything you need is there, right? But people just really think that it's going to be another program. And so it's totally fair to, just like you can retake the certification test a couple of times, you can do the trails a couple of times. And I think we just start norming that for people because it is a lot to digest, especially if you're coming from a completely different industry. And maybe Andy and Chad have some advice too.
I was going to say, I think your experience, Iris, and your comments are spot on. I see it here with individuals who are at Salesforce, who are engineers, who are very, very comfortable with technology, and they'll set a goal to themselves. So let's say get to Ranger, and they'll go through the motions and do the things and take quizzes, and they'll get there, and then they'll have to go apply that knowledge, and they're like, how do I set up a perm set in, like, I forget, I know I passed it. So you're not alone. So that's just I hope you and your team can take some comfort in that. This happens to everybody, even people who this is their job and work at Salesforce. So, but to Anne's point, just go back and revisit it, relearn it, or just-in-time learning. I personally that way too. I can't just memorize stuff, and then I need to get in there and make the mistakes and get the feedback. And so I learned the same way, and I've done the same thing. I set a goal for myself to get to Ranger a few years ago, which is 100 badges, 50,000 points. And I'm glad I started early, because the way I prefer to consume content is very line by line and just make sure I get it so I can do the best at if I'm going to spend the effort, I may as well learn the material. And just searching for the answer and getting it right and moving on. Sure, you'll get the goal, you'll win the battle if you will, but you'll lose the war if you want to think about it that way. So you can't speed it up in my experience. You just got to go through it, and so stick with it. I'm just more encouraging and echoing back to what you've shared, but the struggle is real. Andy, of course, is so smart. He writes this content, he knows this stuff, but Andy, tell us.
Yeah, I mean, as we've kind of been talking about, from a Trailhead standpoint over the years, right, we've been, how do we just make sure we have the right content and just adding more and more content? And I think to the point of what we kind of talked about earlier, like the elements around pathing, especially for a new individual coming into the ecosystem, is so critically important. A few months ago, one of my team members came to me and was like, here is our first badge that we throw you into when you come into Trailhead. And it was like 6 pages long, and it just had been to the point where we had kept adding content in, and then it just wasn't even relevant anymore. It probably scared individuals coming in. And so some of these, we're starting to look at these first-time user experiences. And for that badge, for instance, we're going to do accommodations, kind of Elio talked about. We're going to bring in text with video and making it a little bit more concrete, just so their experience isn't as scary. So as they continue to evolve, they can continue to see the advancements that they're making from that standpoint. But I would say the more that we can work on pathing is going to be easier for that first-time user. And so if it's you yourself helping with some trail mixes, or even you leveraging the trail mixes from kind of the Trailhead team, we're trying to be a little bit more explicit of like, here is the preferred path from Salesforce for you to go through that experience.
That's absolutely fantastic. And this thing where you can create your own trails and share them, that's kind of the things that I've been doing to, like, say, I wouldn't do anything else until you do these, but not everyone listens. One more tiny question, because I know there's a bunch of people waiting. You keep on adding more content. Do you take content out? Because some things are old, and sometimes I'm worried, is this relevant? Am I doing the right thing?
So we do. So last year we've deprecated about 80 badges from the platform. So we do look. So there's a couple of elements for us, and the team has done a really good job. And I'll call out Becky Webster, who's on the call. So we just incorporated an SLA process with our content, and so we have multiple stakeholders that help us write content. Maybe it's a product manager or someone else, and what we do is, if there is bugs or other elements, and maybe this is out of date, there's a lot of grammatical errors in this, we actually give them 2 weeks. And if they actually don't fix that content, we actually pull that content down, because we want to make sure that the content is the most relevant and up to date for all of our audiences. And it can be a little bit challenging since there is so much content to do that, but we've really automated that process. So that way, from the back-end standpoint, you as the learner doesn't necessarily have to worry and think through, all right, what I'm looking at, is that actually up to date? And does that make sense? Or am I just wasting my time? And so we don't want to waste your time with outdated old content.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Great questions, Iris. Thank you. We're going to pause here for a second. We've got 10 minutes left before we continue back to the questions. I wanted to grab a group photo so we can, again, always be branding. So if you'd like to participate, totally optional. But if you're interested, go ahead and unmute your video and hold on your posts in chat for now, because it covers my face and I'd like to be in the picture too. And we'll go ahead and snap a quick picture. Let me click my button over here.
Everyone, how's my hair?
Right.
Am I looking okay? Everyone needs some
Fantastic.
feedback here. Okay, good. Thanks, Ann. Thanks, Ann. Make it. Yeah. Okay, good.
All right, so I will give you all a count of 3 here. All right. 3, 2, 1. Excellent. I just switched to a Mac. I love it. I know you're not supposed to say that if you're a lifetime PC user, but I've made the conversion. My wife is a PC user, and she doesn't talk to me when I make those comments, so I can share it here in full faith and confidence. All right. We've got tons of questions in chat. I apologize in advance if we don't have time to get to all of them, because they're all great, but we'll do the best we can in the remaining 9 minutes. So Jason Wayback has asked, can we expect playgrounds for some other of the products, such as Marketing Cloud, Commerce Cloud? I know with some of those acquisitions, it takes a while to incorporate that into the core technology. So are we tracking with that, or how are we doing?
I think I touched on this a little bit with respect to the, looking for other previous acquisitions, other properties that we want to bring hands-on. Playgrounds are the fun name for what is really has been historically a development edition org that you may be familiar with, and with fun names like Restless Badger and fun names like that. And so, but really, it's just an encapsulation of a scratch area. And so each technology stack is different. What underpins Slack is different than what the technology that underpins Mulesoft or Tableau and historically Marketing Cloud. And they may not have the exact analogous kind of notion of a scratch org or a playground area in their environments. They may have something similar, but they call it something different. It doesn't. So there's a whole bunch of operational concerns under the covers on how to provision those things at scale and cost in a cost-effective manner. So there's a bunch of complications to do that. If it was all free and easy to do, yes. I mean, every platform, if you will, our service offering should have an opportunity to get hands-on. But those are some. I'll give you some kind of context around why this hasn't happened already. Like we bought ExactTarget, the Marketing Cloud, years ago. Like, how come there's no hands-on? I think that's where Andy came from, in fact. So there are some technical challenges behind the scenes. Andy might know. Maybe they just decided on Marketing Cloud ExactTarget to go different
I've
path.
been asking, Chad.
I know.
I've been pushing.
I know.
I appreciate you talking about that. Thank you. Carrie asks, is Partner Learning Camp a whole different department? How do you all work together?
I can take that. So we have learning in a lot of places around the company, and no matter the org chart, we all certainly work together. So Partner Learning Camp, we've got Trailhead Academy, and so there's lots of intertwined support. And so internally we do global talent councils and we do learning councils, and make sure that we stay in close step. Different populations and different departments need different learning. And so there's a case to be made for all of these different kinds of, platforms that we have. And so we just, stay connected around the business.
Awesome. Thank you, Ann. All right. Lori's back with another question. And for those of you that don't know Lori, she runs her own HLS-related Trailblazer community and is passionate about healthcare, coming from that background. She asks, what does it take to be a SME for the creation of Trailhead modules? I'm curious if a person with extensive healthcare background, but newish to Salesforce, can be considered for that role.
Annie, you want to take that one, or you want me to take it?
I mean, that's your team. You hire all the content folks, Andy. Tell us how you hire people.
Yeah, so from a SME standpoint, and probably from a healthcare standpoint, we do love to bring in kind of community members and others, especially as we're starting to write content. One element we haven't necessarily gone down is actually having badges written by Trailblazers, and I think there is an opportunity at some point for us to think through that experience and what that could look like. But I would say, as we think about SMEs and individuals who want to bring feedback into kind of that content, we love that experience. And so we can definitely bring that to the mix if we start working on some more healthcare related badges.
Awesome. Thanks so much. All right. Carrie is mentioned a plug for more flashcards for vocab, please. I love the flashcards too. She'd also love a glossary per exam of important words to know and understand. So what that calls to mind is like Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, where you have to know some of those industry terms. So that's a great suggestion, Carrie. Thank you for that. Tim and Andrew had related questions, both talking about the ability to retake or redo modules. is there the ability coming at some point to retake quizzes in Trailhead without, generating a new email and another account?
I don't think it's on the roadmap at this time. It's something that we're here. I've heard feedback about a bit. So I think just keep your feedback coming about, how you use. It's hard to know, right? We're not behind everyone understanding deeply how they're learning, and we only see the one finish, right, from any of the data that we can get. And so keep the feedback coming, keep the ideas coming, and our team sifts through all of those. I would love a Google Hangout plugin right now that showed the badges, points, and certs of everyone on this call, because I'm realizing as folks ask questions, the deep expertise here. So please turn that into feedback for us.
I'd be curious to know that the basis of that question, is it to reclaim the points that maybe you didn't get because you got it wrong the first time, or is it because you're really interested, you want to retest yourself? Sort of what's the use case behind that request? You can type it in the chat or whatever, but yeah.
Yeah, Tim or Andrew, over to you on that one. Retest, Andrew says.
Gotcha.
And Tim as well. Okay.
Thank you.
Good feedback. Thank you. All right, we'll move through the questions. We've got about 4 minutes left. And so we're backing up to where we were talking about how some folks who get super excited about Trailhead run through a bunch of modules and they finish them, they're Rangers, and they're like, wait a minute, what did I learn? And I fully confess that was me when I first got started. And so Katiana asks, is this something that Trailhead Coach will help minimize, not having to go back and review the content, but helping to truly understand it the first time around? Great question.
I think it depends. What Coach provides is a definitive starting point for someone who is brand new to the ecosystem primarily. And so there's a lot of, kind of wondering of like, should I do this, right? And so it will say, here are the things to do, but how people behave when they're doing those, right? Confetti hungry is my new favorite term I learned in the chat here by someone. If that's what you're after, then, that's what you'll get. So I think what I love is that Coach is part of the Workforce Partner Program. And so people have a community. They have these nonprofits that are doing all this hard wraparound support on this critical one-to-one or one-to-many work. We do one to thousands, one to millions. And so that advice hopefully will be much more closer to that Trailblazer at the beginning of their experience to help as a key intervention, so that people who are investing their time with us, we're so grateful for the incredible talent that comes to the Salesforce ecosystem eager to learn. And we want to make sure that time is used wisely and that hopefully people can just do it once.
Awesome. Thank you, Anne. We've got a couple minutes left. Philip asks, are there any plans to add FinancialForce to Trailhead?
That's a great question. We haven't necessarily done a partnership with FinancialForce, but they are a strategic partner for us at Salesforce. So, as we've done with AWS, Apple, Google, could be something that we could look at in the future.
Fantastic. All right, we've got 1 minute left, so I want to be respectful of everyone's time, and I'm going to ask one more question that I came up with, which I like to use to close sessions out. What is your favorite aspect of Trailhead or the Trailblazer community that drives you and keeps you going?
I'll start if you will. For me, it's the people and they're here because they're passionate about helping others. There are in my org tons of very capable technologists who could go work at other parts of Salesforce, go work at other companies, maybe even command a better benefit package or whatever that is that you think someone might want, but they remain committed and here every day because they want to help you and help the community kind of level themselves up for whatever the reason they had the opportunity themselves, or they're just altruistic in their thing, whatever it is. And for me, the basis of having a working team like that will allow us to overcome any hurdle that gets thrown in front of us, a technical challenge, an organizational challenge, the global macroeconomic situation. But people here are purpose-driven, and so that's what keeps me energized and coming back each day.
The people, thank you.
Yeah.
Anne or Andy?
I can say my values are compassion and equality and innovation. And I get to work with people that live those values, with a product that lives those values, and with you all, and just watch you sort of take this knowledge and do things we didn't even dream and acknowledge. So for me, it's the, I think that together we're going to create one of the most diverse talent markets in the world, and just keep growing and succeeding together.
Yeah, I love the fact that the Trailhead and the Trailblazer community reflects my values back into the ecosystem for sure. Andy, close us out. Final thought.
I've been doing customer education for lots of years, and I think the bigger part is just those light bulb moments or those aha moments where you're just like, this was something I've been struggling with, or I've been just trying to figure out, and now I can do that, and then I can go present that to my boss, my team, whatever that may be. And it just creates you as that champion of, I've figured this out, I know what we can do. And either maybe you've saved money for your company, maybe you've, reduced 19 different clicks for someone on a sales rep side. So I think for us, and even for the team, that's what gets us excited. It's about making you successful, because that is what we're here to do. And we're very excited about that. And honestly, the amount of individuals that I've seen be so excited when they see confetti on their screen, if you ever have a chance, or that feeling, it is one of the best feelings that you can ever have.
Especially on a super badge. All right, we are a couple minutes over, and so we'll go ahead and close out this evening. But before we do, I want to thank Ann, Andy, and Chad for the past hour sharing where Trailhead is and where it's headed. This has been awesome. Thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all of you for joining. We appreciate your time, and we're going to be back next week. Hope to see you there. In the meantime, please stay safe and have an awesome week. We'll see you in the Trailblazer community.
Everybody.